Next, VCR. Last time we looked at the National NV-G7. This time we got the National NV-G10. So it's very similar, but the front looks quite different. And it's got a few extra features. You can see a summary here. Yes, watch the previous video on the G7 if you want to see more stuff about these types of VCRs. It says here all the things it said before for the G7, but it's got an extra sentence in here that the features now include super still advance, and superfine slow playback. Also, it has new one-touch record, 14-day 4-program timer, and infrared remote controller. Although I think it had infrared remote control before. On the G7, yeah, it also had the same one-touch recording, is it? OTR? Yeah, so what they must have done is added some extra video heads so it gains the better still picture and slow motion. So let's take a look at the front of it. A really exciting front, because it's now got these buttons that light up. Let's turn it on. So again, we got the standby VCR button, the eject, we got play and stop. Oh, that doesn't light up until there's a tape in. Okay. Then the clock, the counter, channel selection for the tuner, and then the one-touch recording. And now it's still got a magnetic pull-down cover, but this time it goes the whole way across and leaves those buttons behind, which is interesting. So if you want to rewind or fast forward, you got to open this cover and go in there. So there we got the new slow motion button, which wasn't in the other one. I guess there's a still advanced, maybe that's only on the remote. Or maybe that works as it when it's in pause mode. We'll find out if we can get it to work. There's the tuner controls. Then there's the clock and programming controls there, TV VTR selection for the RF modulator, which decides whether it's going to be passing through the TV aerial signal, or if it's in VTR mode, it will be providing the modulated RF signal out from the VCR's tuner or playback. Then we got the tracking, slow tracking now because it's got the slow motion added, picture soft or sharp, and timer record switch. You can set the clock. Did you push a day, and then you just hold that down, and then I guess you push clock at the end and it starts counting by the little dots there. And then there's the memory or search lock. Search lock means that it will stay in rewind or fast forward automatically until it reaches 0, I think. So you reset it where at the point you want to go back to, put it in search lock mode, and then you either rewind or fast forward and it will stop automatically once it gets there. I think. Is that true? I don't know. Maybe it just means that it's, I don't know. Perhaps we can play with that once we get the thing going. Well, I don't know if this thing works or not. Oops, the front fell off. I think the clips are broken on that. The front fell off. Look that up. On the back, it's the same as before we found on the G7. Video and audio input, video and audio output. What I didn't mention was these video and audio inputs, they switch over. There's no selector switch for whether you're using the inputs or the tuner. Instead, it switches over when you plug something into there or there. So I think there's an extra terminal in these connectors so it can tell whether you plug something in, and then it switches to using that input rather than the TV tuner. Color test signal selector switch there, the RF stuff, and power input, and that's it. Look at that, it's still got the original stuff on here to protect it, I guess. I think that's what it is, yeah. So you can peel that off, and look at that, it's brand new and clean and exciting. Alright, let's take a little look inside and see what this is all about. Well, before we do that, before we do that, we probably should look at the service manual a little bit. Although it is the same as before. Nice slim remote. Probably should get out the remotes so we can look at those at some point as well. They're all in a box somewhere that hiding away. Again, they talk about how you can desolder a board and put it on the other side for easier servicing. It also says there's a flip holder. Flip? Ah, the flip holder? What is that? A fluorescent display or something? In the case of removal of the flip holder, the display tube unit. Is it fluorescent indicator panel? I don't know what it is, what that means. It might be hard to take out from the timer and channel selector circuit board. At that time, cut the two projections out from it by a nipper or something. What? That's very good wording, isn't it? At the time, cut the two projections out from the flip holder by a nipper or something. Yeah, I guess what they mean is use your side cutters or similar tool to chop the little clip thing, I guess. Cut two projections out. Weird. I guess we should take a look at that, see what those things look like. So there's there are instructions, summary of operating instructions. I guess that will tell us there what the that control search lock. What does the search lock do? Does it tell you that? Guess not. I suppose you need to look at the proper instructions for that. Look at that. This seems to be different to what I have here, because it shows the power supply being switch mode power supply. I'm pretty sure what we have here is not a switch mode power supply. Removal of the power transformer unit. It says only for the EN version. Covers EN, A, G, and EA. I don't know what one we have. No, we have the EA version. Okay, this is the EA model, so it doesn't have the switch mode power supply. That's only the EN version. That's a shame. Adjustment procedures for all of the things. Manuals falling apart. Circuit diagrams, block diagrams, PCB layouts. Then there's exploded views and parts lists. All the good stuff that you expect in a service manual. Let's take a look inside this thing. Yes, you can see there we've got the power transformer version, not the switch mode power supply version. Good bit of rust in there. Now in theory that's got more heads on it than the one that we had before. Then on the G7 it's a 3 head, because I've added one extra head for the pause. You can see that one there is not used. So it's got 1, 2, 3 heads. I have the G7 here. I haven't put it back together yet. Presumably this is a 2 head. So it is, look at that. It's got one there, and these two are not wired. So it all checks out. They added one extra head, well, so that this one is a 3 head VCR, and that gives us the ability to do clean pause and slow motion. Let's stick in this and see what happens. There you go. Look, now there's a tape in there. The stoplight lights up. That's quite nice. Yeah, we've probably got better take up than the other one. I mean the G7, the pinch roller and capstan is working, and the back tension is reasonable, so that's good. That's a good sign. That's we should connect the video output up to it and see what happens when we put a real tape in it. Now what you can see here on the board, other regions would use RCA connectors for the video instead of BNC, which is common on the PAL units, and so they've allowed that there on the layout. So I think yes, so there's the audio out RCA. You can see it's got a very similar footprint there for the video in which is not used, but what is used is the ground, and then there's the signal, and then the switch, 2 pins there, the center, and then similarly the audio input is a 4-pin thing. I guess there's 2 grounds which hold it together. So there'll be one that's the signal and the switch. Maybe not. Maybe it's an isolated switch, ground, signal, switch across the top. I don't know. Something like that. It's not just a 2-pin connector, because those video and audio input connectors have switches in them. Let's try put on the video signal, and we'll put this tape in and see if it goes. Try. Yeah, fast forward's not too heavy. Neither is rewind. Let's just go into play mode and see what happens. Yeah, there's a bit of, I think it's distorting the top edge of the tape maybe. So you can hear a noise which sounds like something's catching, but look at that, the picture is pretty good. Better than the G7 that we tried. Yeah, just not sure what's going on. Yeah, it's a little bit wonky. So you can cue the fast forward while playing, review. They're alright on the monitor, the capture is not very good. I've tried pause. Yeah, not the best. Oh yeah, so pushing the slow button on there is the still advance, so that's good. Let's see, it moves the tape. Does it? No, it doesn't. Oh, I must have just imagined that. Okay, ignore that. Okay, now we're in slow. Yeah, that picture's not very good. Maybe that third head is a bit wonky. Yes, I guess the still advance function is only available from the remote. So it should be able to use this slow tracking control to get the pause picture good. Anyway, this machine seems somewhat functional, so that's nice. Good to see a machine that works still somewhat after all this time. Maybe a head clean will sort it out. So let's take apart all this stuff. We'll have a look at the board and we'll have a look at the mechanical parts, and perhaps we'll do a little comparison to the G7 machine to see what's different. Is there much different? Might be more or less the same board, just a bit of extra stuff somewhere to deal with the slow and still advance. There'll be some extra stuff going on with the head switching. So again, in this version, you got to take the front off, front panel off, then you can get out the cassette loading, and once you got the front off you can get the boards off of that, and then you can lift out the main board. This is a bit of a fiddle to get in there. This is unplugged now, so we're alright for taking this apart. We'll take a look in the bottom. Again, there's just a smaller panel. It doesn't cover the whole base of the unit. Bottom cover. What we see in there is pretty much the same as what we saw in the G7. That interesting capstan motor with the flex board coming off of it, all integrated into the chassis. Loading motor here. Belt still quite sticky, which is nice. And similarly, that one is, maybe this had been serviced more recently than the G7 machine, so it's in better order. Well, the belts are perhaps a bit newer. Now we got the bottom off, we can get access to these clips here, which are holding the front panel on. One final screw there. Now that should be free to come off. One clip here, so that comes off. Also nice dust and spider webs in there. You can see a very similar front panel board done in 2 sections with that little connector between them. Although, not that similar because I think this part of it is more or less the same, because it even has the same part number there, VEP07300, same as that. But this section here is different, and that has, the G10 has an extra connector going to it, cable assembly, and there's an IC there. I wonder what that's all about. Maybe because it's got lights that light up for play and stop. Who knows? Pretty interesting. Alright, we'll undo these red screws. Look at that. There's a capacitor there. This little rubber cap thing over it. Why is that? Why does it need that over it? So it explodes and spews its guts everywhere? Why would they put a little cover on that? It's got one on the G7 as well. Didn't notice it. Don't know, is there some high voltage or conductive thing in the area? That doesn't make any sense. Strange. It'd be sitting just there. Anyway, that's interesting. Full of surprises. You know, because there's an extra cable that needs to be unhooked under here. There's little clippy things holding it. Now we undid the screws from the top, the 3 or 4 red screws. Final step before we can hinge this board out, or other than unclipping a bunch of cables, is to undo the 2 screws on the RF I/O panel. I do wonder, is the main board here the same as in the G7? There's a part number there, and it's just those packed circuits, the circuit boards that hang off of it, which are different. Let's see. Could be. It says VJB06333, which is the same as this, B06333. So in theory, this board here is all the same, and the differences are on one of the other boards that hang off of it. Let's see, is this going to come off? Okay, we've got to undo some clips. And then that little clip at the back will sit there, hold everything nice. Now, what were they talking about? Something about using a nippers or something to chop something on this. It might be hard to take out from the board. At that time, cut 2 projections by a nipper or something. It seems like what it is. Get your nipper or something. Seems like they were referring to that thing. That is the projection. Is that because it's really hard to line up that with the hole in the board? Pretty sure that's what they meant, not this part, which is what holds it clipped in place. Strange. That's really weird. I don't know, we probably don't need to take that off, so we don't need to find out. I don't know, let's do it anyway, since we're here. Yeah. Now we can see them a bit better. So it's just that thing there, the little locating post thing, which goes into that smaller hole. Apparently they make it difficult. Doesn't look that difficult to me. Just squint back in. The clips on the back there are a bit munted because they've been through wave soldering process. You can see they've gone a little bit crusty. Glass fiber reinforced plastic, so it has a fairly high melting temperature, but Yeah, it can still get a little bit crustified from being dragged through a stream of molten solder. Good lead solder back in the day. Oh, there's something interesting here. The connectors they've used, insulation displacement style connectors, instead of crimped pins that are inserted into a housing, which is what all the other ones are. Crimped pins that clip into a housing, little JST branded things. They're not JST connectors. Well, people have called any type of connector like this a JST connector. It's not necessarily a JST connector, and JST is not a type of connector. It's the manufacturer of a particular range of connectors. So be careful of how you say that. But yes, these are very likely to be actual JST connectors of a particular series, that if you went and looked on the JST website, you would be able to find it. It would have normally a 2 or 3 letter abbreviation which denotes the series. Yeah, strange that they've used that. Wasn't like that on the G7 model. It just used the regular crimped pin style for this power supply cable. And notice there's another IDC one there on that servo, something from the servo board. Interesting. Let me take this thing off. Again, be careful and use your proper number 2 JIS screwdriver, and nothing else will be able to get these off. Even that's not very troubling. I think my screwdriver is wearing out. It will happen with these types of screwdrivers, JIS screwdrivers, because they lock into the screw so hard. If they do have a cam out or the screw is dodgy, it will gradually wear that away and it won't be able to lock in properly. Makes a really good noise though. Maybe someone's already had a go at that one. It does look like it. The screw head is a bit worn, so that's possibly why it jumped out then. But yeah, I have noticed on some of my screwdrivers they're getting a bit wasted. Time to find some new ones. I'll just order a bunch of new ones. Guess this is different. The little head amp thing. So we'll have another signal to deal with. I already put the other one back together. Maybe this is the same thing. It's just part of it's not used. No, it is different. Different part number there. Which is which. Yeah, different IC as well. Different part number of that. Pretty sure that was this was the G7 one. Yeah, so there's a bit of extra stuff there because there's one extra video head which the signal needs to be switched. Go down this wire, and then the board over here, luminance chrominance board, which I expect will be a different part number because it has to handle that. Then there's audio, servo, system control is down on the main board. Then there's the TV tuner stuff up here, power supply things here, some regulators. That's the motor driver for either the head or the capstan, and then the other one is that one there without a heatsink. And then that one there is a little motor driver for the loading motors, and that's got a little tab on it. We need to service in this area here where the idler is, which makes the take up and supply reels turn. 2 red screws to undo here, which are fairly captive, so you don't have to worry about them floating away. And then just lifts up slightly, pushes back, and then that will come up. And you can see the screws are kind of squashed, and because of that they interfere with the plastic and they'll stay in there. Now with that out of the way, you get access to idler, which there's a little split washer to be removed. You can see that thing's all cracked and ruined. That's why the take-up is so bad. And there was no rewind and fast forward because that thing is fully crustified. Still worked alright on play, but yeah, that would need to be cleaned or ideally replaced to restore proper rewind and fast forward. You can see here, this one has the newer version of back tension band, one of the newer versions, where it's a plastic strip with the felt glued onto it. And then finally the latest versions had the felt all the way to the ends being crimped in, so there was no way for it to come off. So it must have continued to be a problem that after a while that felt would become unstuck from the band and float away, and then you get no back tension. Is it good that I'm just repeating the same stuff for every VCR we look at? No, because some people might only want to see about this model, so we need to know all of the things. Well, all of the things that I know. It's probably not very many things, but it's enough things to get an overview and idea of the machine. And you've got to be very careful now, because these machines use these flat ribbon cables, and the one that goes to the cassette loading mechanism, and the stiffening tab on the back there, which is glued to it to hold all those parts in the right position. Those crack off really easy now because they're old, so you've got to be very careful when connecting and disconnecting those, that the stiffener part doesn't just crack off and disappear, because then you'll be more or less impossible to get the cable back into its connector. You'd need to re-glue the stiffening part onto it in order to hold it all nice while you push it in. Yeah, it's really bad once that falls off. Not recommended. Just notice the super capacitor there on the main board is a much bigger one than we saw on the G7, and because of that it's spaced off by a little pad. I'm not allowed to look at it. Here we go. Yes, there's a little foam pad there to hold it up in the air because there's a wire link there, and yeah, the outside of electrolytics and that type of capacitor has to be treated as live. So yeah, they do the right thing by putting a little insulating pad there so it can't touch the wire link. I guess that applies more to high voltage capacitors, but yeah. Don't want to accidentally shorting out, especially if this was subject to high vibration. Can't remember what else I was going to say about it, about any of this. Ah, yeah, the power supply. It's just a power transformer, AC mains power transformer. Then there's some fuses, diodes for rectifiers, and I think there's a regulator and some capacitors. And see, also there's a little metal tab there, so it connects to the shield of the tuner onto this frame. The VCR itself is not grounded in any way. I think that's probably us on this. Keep it nice and short and easy so that we can get through all the VCRs in my lifetime. Well, all the ones that I've got. Yeah, they got a bit bent. Anyway, there is a fairly brief test out and exploration of the National, or potentially Panasonic depending on where you are or where it came from, NV-G10. Stay tuned for the next video. Probably another VCR, but it might be some other stuff, as I keep hinting but never get around to doing it because it's more work than doing a VCR video. See you next time.